Good morning. Good morning.
Hey, Marlene, Bob McFall's calling, just checking in with you to see if we're good to send out the agenda and the membership analysis to the committee. You can reach me back here at FPN at 813-983-7396. Thank you.
Good morning.
Hello.
Hey, Bill, this is a test. You hear me?
I hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you. I see black. Hello, lady.
Hi, Bill.
Hey there. Can you
How's it
see
going?
the screen now? Can you see the PowerPoint?
I see the PowerPoint. Yep.
Outstanding. It is working.
Okay, I'm going to turn my screen a tiny bit because I've got this window behind me. And so, Bill.
Hey, Sharon.
I got you. Only one ask.
Maybe turn it some more.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. We can.
Oh, good.
I am standing in for Jacob Oliva for the Department of Education. So it's an honor to be with you this morning.
Good morning. Is this Melissa?
It is. I do not know why my camera is not working.
Yeah, we just see black. You may have to authorize it. Sometimes when you open up Zoom, you have to authorize the camera each time.
Okay, let me see.
There may be a little icon with the picture of a camera.
I'm looking. It was working earlier, so I apologize. I did test everything out.
We've got time. People are still signing in.
Melissa, what's your last name? I'm sorry.
My last name is Ramsey.
Okay.
Just cut out.
And yeah.
Hey there, Braulio.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
Good. I see Gila.
Hello.
Hey there. I always like when we get the Johnson Scholarship Foundation, we get 2 for each time.
Right, that's right.
Hey, Chuck.
Melissa, I'm busy looking for your bio so I can properly introduce you today. I was prepared to introduce Chancellor Oliva.
Well, Braulio, you don't have to worry about it. I'm just a stand-in, so I can give my own introduction. That's fine.
Okay.
However you want to.
Okay.
He's very sorry he couldn't be with you today.
No, I'm glad that you're able to join us.
Yes, and I'm prepared to share my PowerPoint presentation as well.
Okay. Bill, let me know when you think we're ready to get started.
Hey, sorry about you. Do you see the dial-in number? Because I don't, without logging out, I don't know that I can see it.
Bob, we hear you, but we don't see you. So if you're worried about being logged in, you are logged in. Braulio, I think we can start whenever you'd like. We've got a couple people who registered who are not on, but they may join us or they may not.
Okay. Since we have a short time together, I would like to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our Education Affinity Group meeting, facilitated and hosted by the Florida Philanthropic Network. You know, our guidance statement as a group is really to support a culture of high expectations for all students in and out of school from early childhood through post-secondary education, leading to career success. And so my hope is that our agenda today reflects a component of that guiding statement. And I just want to welcome all of you today. Our meeting agenda is really focused on learning of the Florida Department of Education's plans and activities around Governor DeSantis' recent executive order, and have a discussion on how these recent developments affects our work as a group, and then we can have some conversation among ourselves as members on how this information that we're going to learn today impacts our agenda holistically, and also impacts us as we prepare for our June in-person meeting here in Tampa. So before we get started, let's do a quick round of introductions on those who are on the phone, and then I'll be prepared to introduce Melissa, our guest speaker. Anyone want to kick us off? How about you go, Chuck? Okay, we can't hear you, Chuck. You must be on mute.
Hi, I'm Chuck Tiernan from the LEAP Tampa Bay College Access Network, and apparently a rookie at unmuting my phone and getting audio to go with the video.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Hey, hi, it's Lady Herford. I'm here with the Johnson Scholarship Foundation.
And I'm Sharon Wood, with the Johnson Scholarship Foundation.
All right. Anyone else, Bob?
I'll jump in, Braulio. This is Bill Hoffman, the education consultant.
No, it's asking for the ID.
Yeah, Bob's having some technical issues. He's trying to get
that
sound
the
and camera both working at the same
invite?
time.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
All right, I see a Kelly. Is that Kelly, can you hear us? All right. I know we will have other members joining us as we dive into this agenda today, but I want to go ahead and kick us off by welcoming Melissa Ramsey from the Florida Department of Education. She serves as Executive Director there as part of Chancellor Jacob Oliva's team. And Melissa, will you take a few minutes and share a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'd love to. And again, I apologize that Chancellor Leva can't be with us today. He actually had several conflicts, so he sends his regards, and I'm looking forward to spending time with you today. It's been an honor. I've actually participated in Leadership Florida with Mr. Bill Hoffman, and he is an excellent representative of your mission and vision. So I appreciate this opportunity today. I am actually the Executive Director of School Improvement. So I mainly work with low-performing schools across the state, and I have stepped into some leadership roles in the department. I'm in my 4th year here and 2nd commissioner. And as you know, today we will be talking about the 2 executive orders that really impact our vision moving forward with our new senior leadership at the helm of the department now. So I'm trying to share my screen, but it's not giving me permission.
Johnny, you may have to do that. I think whoever signed on there is administrator.
And if you're not speaking, if everyone would mind muting their microphone until it's until they'd like to speak.
Are we having problems sharing?
We're seeing part of your screen. We're seeing, try to go, there you go. We've got your slideshow.
Okay, great. I apologize. All right. Again, today we're going to talk about Executive Order 1931 and 1932 that were signed by Governor Ron DeSantis in January. And we're going to begin with Executive Order 1931, which is charting a course for Florida to really be thoughtful in becoming #1 in the nation in workforce education by 2030. And ensuring that Florida students are prepared for the jobs of the future, which aim to move Florida from the middle of the pack in workforce and to be in the forefront. And in order to do so, we have been challenged by Governor DeSantis and Commissioner Corcoran to meet this bold vision to become #1 by 2030. Some of you might ask, why 2030? This year is significant because it would be when our current first graders are expected to graduate from high school. And again, to reach this goal, it's going to require all sectors working together, and all institutions will also be playing a role in this K-20 vision. In 2018, Florida ranked 24th at 46.9% in attainment. And attainment is defined as the number of citizens in the state aged 25 to 64 with a higher education certificate, degree, or other high quality credential. And this is defined by Lumina, who defines high quality credentials as degrees and certificates that have been well defined and transparent, with learning outcomes that provide clear pathways to further education and employment. And again, Florida must continue to work and build on K-20 initiatives to increase attainment. We'll need to continue to enhance our pathways that begin in elementary school and go throughout middle and high schools with different on and off ramps to technical centers, colleges, and universities, as well as supporting adults that wish to pursue additional certification and degrees. But you can see we ranked 24 in 2018. And in 2019, this was just released about 3 weeks after this initiative, this order. and we moved up to number 20th in the rankings at 49.3%. You can see the degree attainment by counties. This is done a little differently. This is at least an AA degree or above. And in 2018, you can see that we only had 4 districts above 50%, and there are some in the teens. So the 4 that are above 50%, several have colleges and universities in their county. So we see a strong emphasis with Leon being in the lead in 2018 at 56.1%. In 2019, you can see Leon still in the lead with a little bit of increase. But we do show these slides to different districts in our conversations, especially with superintendents and education associations, just so they can start having these conversations, especially when they see that their district is below the state average especially. It allows us to have conversations of what are you doing in your county to increase degree attainments, and having conversations about different programs they might offer. My background is from a rural district, and we had what we called legacy programs, just because the teacher of that industry certification had been there for a number of years. That's why we offered it. And we had to have conversations with workforce development, our Chamber of Commerce, to really move the needle and find out what were the needs in our district, and were we meeting those with our student population. So this just gives you one example of how the data is broken down to start those conversations to guide this executive order. This slide shows the attainment progress that Florida has actually made since 2012. Again, as stated earlier, attainment represents a high-quality degree or credential after high school for the purposes of this slide. And Lumina, just to note, does not include apprenticeships. It defines high-quality credentials as degrees and certificates that have well-defined and transparent learning outcomes that provide clear pathways to further education and employment. And that's what we want here in Florida. So you can see that Florida, since 2012, is up 8.8%, which is a little above the United States, which is up 7.5% since 2012. So we are making a little progress, and we do have the new slide to share with you as well for 2019. This is the attainment progress made in Florida since 2013, and you can see Florida is continually to move a little higher than the state, in our state average, than the nation. So there's an estimated 8% of Florida residents and 5.2% of U.S. residents that hold a workforce relevant certificate. And the green illustrates the workforce relevant certificates, and the blue illustrates the 2-year degrees or higher. So you can see the pace broken down from 2013 all the way to 2017. That sums up Executive Order 1931. And the next executive order I'll cover for you today is Executive Order 1932. This is a commitment to eliminating Common Core, ensuring high-quality academic standards, and raising the bar for civic literacy. And there is a requirement in this order that by January 1st, 2020, The commissioner and his team will thoroughly review Florida's current standards and make recommendations to the governor. We are doing this by accepting public input and more opportunities throughout the year for stakeholders to give us their feedback. What we've really been cognizant in messaging is this is a review process. It doesn't happen immediately. A lot of our districts and schools were concerned that these changes would mean impact on testing that's occurring now. And there are no changes to our statewide assessments or to our school grade calculation for this school year, the 2018-19 school year, or for the 2019-20 school year due to this order. We've also had to take a step back and revise our timeline. So I'm going to share further information about this with you. Basically, these are the 7 areas that we're focused on regarding this order. To eliminate Common Core from Florida standards, which we have done so historically and revised our standards in 2014 to move away from Common Core. However, there is some mirroring of those standards. We are providing a roadmap to ensure that Florida standards are #1 in the nation. We want to make sure we're creating opportunities for the public to give us input. We're improving the quality of our instructional curriculum. A lot of the complaints we currently have, and some of you have seen the opportunity myth, is that most of the state adopted curriculum is not aligned to the standards. And so we are teaching our students, and it's not based on standards-based instructional materials. 5th, we're suggesting innovative ways to streamline testing. There's a focus on civics literacy. And lastly, I outline the pathway to make sure we're the most literate state. And we know that standards are important because they outline exactly what students should be able to know, their learning outcomes. And again, we've worked hard to establish a timeline for this standards review because it's very aggressive to have a report to the governor by January 1st, 2020. And again, we know that Florida initially adopted Common Core in 2010, but we did make an update and started calling our standards Florida standards in 2014. And this is where Florida made some changes. Some of you might remember, and I had a student, a child as a student in 3rd grade, so I remember the addition of cursive writing. It also impacted calculus and some other minor changes. So our #1 goal is to ensure that we are the nation's best. And our teams are also currently working on doing crosswalk comparisons between the top performing states in the nation to see what their standards look like. And internally, we actually have an interesting comparison with Massachusetts, who usually ranks in the top 3 in most of the testing that happens nationwide, as well as with other countries. And there are very little differences when you compare Florida standards to those implemented in Massachusetts. I do want to share with you website information. You can actually sign up on our site to receive updates to the standards review process. There is a way to provide general input, but we also have adopted a new platform at the end of March that's an online public platform that I'll review in just a moment. But all our presentations and all the memos that we've sent out to districts and stakeholders are posted at the site. It lists all the presentations that we do, and this one will be added accordingly this week. You can see that the email is also attached. We value input, and we've had thousands of comments thus far. You can see where we took our initial feedback from, and this is the list I just mentioned of the presentations and communication that we've already provided. This next slide shows you the online public input platform. This is where someone actually has to join and get a login account, and then they are able to give us appropriate feedback for each standard that they're interested in. And it will give them opportunities to comment on grade bands or grades for both ELA and math. You can see the math grade band for elementary is shown on this slide, and you would be able to click on it by grade. And this was rolled out very smoothly. This is an actual screenshot that you can see the current standard for the grade. This is kindergarten math. And they get to select if they want to, if their comment or recommendation would be to eliminate, revise, or keep the standard, and or move the standard to another grade or band. And again, this is where they can give a lot of comment and feedback in text form as well, if they want to offer a rewrite suggestion or give us more information on that standard. We are also tasked with ensuring that there's high quality instructional materials aligned to the standards, and this is the recommendation for the new adoption schedule. We are extending our current contracts for math and ELA materials, which means that we are suspending the original adoption of math and ELA until the standards review is complete. And as shown in this chart, DOE will be issuing a call for bids for world language K through 12 and career and technical education 6 through 12 this month to be in place for 2020-21 school year. We are also working with textbook companies so that once the standards review are complete and any revisions are received and get state board approval, we will issue a call for bid for ELA K-12 by April 2020 to be in place for the 21-22 school year. And the math call for bid will be issued by April 21 to be in place for the 22-23 school year. And again, this also shifts some of the other subject areas. The takeaways are significant, that the standards review again will be conducted throughout this year with our recommendations to Governor DeSantis by January 1st, 2020. There will be no changes to the statewide assessment or school grades calculation for this school year and for the upcoming 2019-2020 school year related to these executive orders. There's extensive public input opportunities available before any recommendations are submitted to the state board for the rulemaking process and for the recommendation to actually get approved. There's also the instructional materials adoption revision, and we will be offering communication throughout this process to make sure that districts and schools are updated in this review. I know that I have added just a couple slides to make connection because we had talked through both executive orders, and some of our work in Florida has been grounded, as I mentioned, on the opportunity myth, and we realize that students are not college and career ready. They will do what we ask them to do, and they succeed on 71% of their assignments. However, they meet 17% of grade level standards on those exact assignments. And 83% of our students actually earn A, B's, and C's in English language arts, and 78% earn A's, B's, and C's in math. And so again, we know when they're graded with these assignments, they're not meeting the demand of the standards. So some of our work is to hone in on this, and we want to make sure that we give students a chance to meet the demands of these standards, because that's when they'll succeed on content, and this is how they can build pathways to college and career success. And so we really focus on the opportunity myth findings. There's 5 of them, but I do want to hone in on number 3, when students are spending most of their time in school with access to 4 key resources, great improvements are made. So we know that they need grade appropriate assignments, strong instruction, deep engagement, and teachers with high expectations. So again, this is true for all students, students of color, and students from low income backgrounds. And now they are less likely to have access to those 4 key resources. And so we know that if those 4 key levers are in place, we'll see improvements in student achievement, especially for students who start the year off below grade level. So let's look at what that means for how those 4 key levers make a difference for all students. You can see the academic growth very quickly for those 4 areas. 1.7 months of academic progress when they have access to better assignments. 0.2 months when they have access to stronger instruction. 2.5 months of academic progress when they are more engaged in class. And shockingly, 4.6 months of academic progress just when their teachers have higher expectations. So again, we think about solutions when we think about these executive orders and the standards that are in front of the students in these classrooms. So we want to make sure we continue to provide all students with greater access to these 4 resources and ensure that they have higher quality experiences. I also list this link. This is to our new ESSA report card. It's called EduData, and this is live now. So if you are able to look at this link, it will give you significant school and district details about, again, a school or district. It breaks down the details by a subgroup that is required by our new ESSA plan that was adopted by the US DOE in September 26th of 2018. And this is a site that parents and the public need to get familiar with because it gives a lot of information simplistically. The department had a program team that worked very hard on this to ensure that we were meeting compliance to launch a report card that was easy for the public to understand. and there is a lot of graphs and charts that are a lot more simpler than our last site that we have. So I wanted to give you access to this very valuable resource. Some of you might be familiar if you've had to pull any graphs or charts for reports that you've done in Florida of edstats.org. And it was real robust, and it could be very clunky, and it wouldn't let you use multiple step process. Well, EduData has will be taking its place in the 1920 year, and it's very simplistic to use, and you will find all the valuable information required for reporting mechanisms. So I wanted to make sure you got a link to that data as well. So that is our review of both executive orders, and then just a little more information that connects workforce development and the standards review into our process here at the department. Are there any questions that I can answer from the group?
Melissa, just a comment for everybody. You referenced the Opportunity Myth report. Some of us have seen it. I'm not sure if everybody has, but Dr. Brownie is going to be coming to our next EAG meeting in June in Tampa and doing a presentation on it. So we'll be getting the in-depth information on it.
Your group is in for a treat. That will be a great opportunity to really know more about that study and its impact on teaching and learning. That is one of our guiding forces in our work right now, that we're making sure that all of our principals and our different programs here at the department are familiar with that, to have aha moments and open up conversations to really make changes in the classroom that impact our students. Thank you, Bill.
I had a couple questions. One is, I don't know if you're reviewing the input you're getting on the standards review as it comes in, or if you're waiting till some later point, but I was just curious, not what particular standards you may be getting feedback on, but what type of feedback are you getting? Is it the people who are wanting to tweak standards, or people who are wanting to eliminate standards, or do you have any feel at all? I know you've had the site up for only about a month or so.
Yes, and great question, Bill. We are getting thousands of comments. I think the last count was close to 4,000 comments on our public survey. And weekly, we do get a detailed report of those comments, but they have a wide spectrum of responses, from we love this standard and this is why, to we hate Common Core. Please, delete them from Florida. We can't do our students' homework when they come home at night because it's too confusing. So we are deciphering all those. At the new site that I shared, where they actually have to get a login, we're able to track if, especially if they're an expert in the field, which we really value our experts out there in the state and nationally. We've asked for them to give us feedback. So we are able to decipher if it's from Mr. Joe in the public versus one of our leading experts in the area of ELA or math. So those we are getting more detailed information, but it is a wide array of comments, but each comment will be read and deciphered in that manner. So thank you for asking about that. We will be, throughout the process, looking at those and bringing them back out for more public input as we draft language if necessary. So the review process will be ongoing and cycled throughout the coming months.
Melissa, thank you for your presentation. Braulio here. I wanted to ask about the regional teams that you oversee and whether or not they will be engaged in hosting events, or is there any type of in-person engagement that you plan around the review process? Are you working with any organizations in those communities to coordinate these types of convenings? Or is this all being collected online, promoting the existence of the review form and all collected online without having any types of in-person engagement? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. That is a great question as well, Braulio. For this upcoming months, we're collecting the input online, but in September and October, those will be pivotal months that will be having public workshops to do more face-to-face review and give the public more opportunity to give input on drafts. So that will be an important step in the process that the commissioner has outlined for us.
Okay.
Melissa, I was curious also, as I don't know if this is planned as part of the review, but one of the concerns that I've heard from folks is the potential cost of changing the standards in cost of teacher professional development, curricular adoption, and changing materials and whatnot. Is it anticipated that part of the review will be a projection of what the cost would be for any changes that are being made?
Great question, Bill. I have not seen any projected cost analysis done, but that is why one of the slides that we reviewed a few minutes ago, that's why we're making sure that our instructional materials adoption schedule was proactively given to all districts, so they did not spend more funding in areas based on our oldest adoption cycles. So, and we are trying to message to ensure that districts and schools are being thoughtful in their professional learning, and if they're concentrating on the instructional shifts within math and ELA standards, those can be universally applied, even if the standards might change in the review process. So again, ensuring that the messaging is very proactive in this, and we are deepening our work in also looking at instructional practice, what planning all the way to the actual student assignment, because again, what the studies have shown us nationally as well as the study here in Florida is that the assignments do not have the rigor that's necessary for the student to be successful in college and career pathways. And that's why we see some students aren't prepared to take college level math or college level English and have to do remedial work, or they can weld, but then they can't pass their welding exam because they can't compute the mathematics. So those are also part of the instructional shifts on the content that we're trying to hone districts into being very thoughtful about, and also thinking about grade appropriate assignments, the strong instruction, student engagement, and ensuring that teachers have high expectations, because as I know from working with low performing schools, one of the major factors that I'll hear when I go on a school and go on a learning walk is, oh, but my kids can't do this, instead of having a higher expectation. And so shifting mindsets is a part of that communication process. But we did want to make sure that the districts, especially the superintendents, heard this message early on in this process. So it was approximately 3 weeks after the executive order was released. Chancellor Oliva had a webinar with all the superintendents and their key personnel to ensure that they heard this messaging, so they could be stewards of their funding as well as ensure return on investments.
Thanks.
Melissa, in the executive order around the standards, you mentioned a goal of being the most literate state as being something that was included in that order. Has there been any metrics identified for how we would compare ourselves to other states? I know for the first order, it's very clear. It's the attainment, educational attainment metric. We're all very familiar with that. Has there been, is there a national metric on the most literate state that we can take note of?
There is a metric, Braulio, that our Just Read office is more familiar with than I, to ensure that we are the most literate state. It's actually the last line in the executive order. So they are working on that metric, and it's the number of libraries and number of bookstores. So it's a lot of those type of indicators. So I'm not as familiar with it as
Okay.
I should be. So I apologize.
Okay. I'd love to follow up with someone on your team just to kind of get us, or if you can point me to someone at the Just Read office.
Sure. The director is Richard Meyer, and
Okay.
he's very accessible, and he loves to have conversations regarding this.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions from the group? All right. Hearing none, Melissa, I just want to thank you again for taking the time to meet with us and share this presentation. I found it extremely helpful, particularly on the Executive Order 1932. And so as we plan for our June meeting as a philanthropic community in Florida committed to education, your presentation is going to help us quite a bit in informing that agenda. And so thank you for taking the time today to be with us.
Sure, it's an honor, and thank you for your work in any way that K-12, the chancellor, or any of our people can support you. We're a phone call away, so thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So can you guys still hear me? I don't know if we're still on. Okay. So at this point of the agenda, it's really an opportunity for us to debrief together on what we just heard and think about the upcoming June meeting for how what we've just learned can inform our agenda together in June. And then there's some other questions that I'd want to ask that's sort of separate from the presentation conversation that I'd want us to begin thinking about as we move towards strengthening the group, doubling down on our vision as a group, and so forth. So let's just start with a debrief on today's presentation and how it can inform our meeting agenda in June. I'll start calling on people. Lady, how about you? Any thoughts on the presentation today?
It's been just very interesting when she mentioned the comparison to Massachusetts, their standards. I guess I need to kind of educate myself a little bit more about what it is that they're doing. That's kind of the model. I just thought that was an interesting little nugget.
This is Sharon. I guess I'm just not understanding exactly what the first executive order does, 1931. To agree that we want to be good, yeah, fine. And then I'd really like to hear what you find out, Braulio, about the metrics. She said things like, we'll know that we're literate by the number of libraries and the number of books. I mean, let's face it, people are not going to the libraries or buying books at a bookstore. They're going online and they're loading it in their Kindles. And so I don't see that how many bookstores we have in Palm Beach County is going to show you how literate this county is. So I'd really like to see some more details on that part of it.
Braulio, Sharon, to your comment about the first executive order, some of what's happening, there's actually legislation now working its way through the session that will eliminate the Higher Education Coordinating Council, rename it something like Council for Talent Development or Talent and Workforce Development or something along those lines. It reconstitutes it with slightly different membership. But they, for example, will be tasked with increasing attainment. So I guess that's consistent with the HEC having already adopted attainment goal this past year. But sounds like the governor wants to double down and increase attainment even more. And by the way, I don't know if everyone saw Kelly, who unfortunately can hear us and see us. She can't speak to us. She's in the chat saying, I see a strong need for this information to be shared with LCANs.
True.
Absolutely, yeah. I can see, and that's sort of where my question was going at in terms of their plans for in-person conversations with community. I think it would be great for FCAN or Lori's team or someone else to follow up with Melissa on those meetings that she mentioned would be taking place in the fall. Because yeah, it's a great place for LCANs to be engaged. That's a great comment. Thank you. Charles, I see you joined us. Welcome. I know you're traveling. I wanted to get your take on what you've heard, and is there any thoughts?
Yeah, I joined midway. I think that they're just going through the process of getting the public input, and I think that we got a pretty good, I think, open, honest sense of what they're trying to do, which is they've got a directive and they're trying to figure out what does that mean over the next few months. So it wasn't a whole lot that was new, but I thought it was pretty transparent about what they were trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. I like the data that the website they shared about the ESSA data portal. I can't, I'm going to dive in there and take a look at. Hopefully, there's some school by school data that's historically the federal Department of Education has really encouraged states to disaggregate data by race and income. So I'm hoping that there's some disaggregated localized data there. So that was a takeaway for me, is I didn't know that site existed. So that's great to know. Chuck, what was your takeaway?
Similar to what other folks said, I think the need to get this information about what they're currently thinking and how they're continuing to get feedback does need to get broadly spread among the LCAN community, because again, these are things that ultimately college and career readiness impacts our ability to get folks in and get them through. How it affects the agenda, I think it kind of the starting of that distribution of information. I think the robust kind of discussion that we can have at our summer meeting, I think, would be extremely valuable. I would be a little interested to get more to get more detail on some of the, for instance, as I look at my notes, the streamlined testing aspect. What kind of feedback are they getting? And undoubtedly, it runs the gamut. But those sorts of things, that we've talked about in relationship to Bright Futures and that. Where is the feedback tipping at this point? And again, hopefully they stay very transparent about that and show us how they took the feedback that they received and made that part of their plans, their steps going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. I can't help but think about how this movement around the review process, how that could potentially impact our grant making in K-12. I really don't know the answer to that question. I don't know, what part of me says, well, if we know a big change is coming in the system, how likely is philanthropy to make major investments in K-12 as it relates to math, student improvement, or reading improvement when we know there's going to be a huge shakeup coming? Those are some thoughts that I don't know if you guys are having similar, questions being asked. It really is it's not very stable when there's all this change coming, right? So just a thought, as we as a group begin to learn together about standards and the changes and in K-12 instruction and student performance, I really would encourage us to bring to this group things you're learning on, or how you're addressing this period of time we're in and your investments in K-12, right? Because to me, it's kind of cloudy right now, and it doesn't make our job easier, frankly.
Right. Well, I think about the term that popped up in actually our last leadership council meeting, that term community capital. So, and how does during a time that, like you have said, it'll be fairly unstable for our education partners with a lot of unknown, how does the community come around, not just financial resources, but the other kinds of community capital that we can provide to help make that a smoother transition? If there's going to be a transition, how do we, not leave that to say, well, when you get done doing that, then, come back and tell us how it's going, but rather, look at how do we take an active role so that it's the community moving forward together.
Braulio, this is Sharon. I wasn't deeply involved in this kind of discussion back in 2010, but better yet, 2009. How did the philanthropy community react as Common Core suddenly became the new thing? And same kind of, as I see it, same kind of shakeup. What did we do then, and what did we learn about what we did then?
Yeah, I think that's a great question that we should, have written down and maybe explore a little bit around philanthropy's response during the Common Core era. I don't know, I can't provide a response. Sharon, I wasn't in philanthropy back in 2009, but for those who were, I think it's a great opportunity for them to share us to collect some feedback. I know Gates was heavily involved, and others, but back then it was a different, there was a different tone in the community, right? It was just there was a much more, at least we look back and we say, boy, those were some more bipartisan moments, right? And when you think about the movement of Common Core, it felt like states were taking ownership of the process. It was federal, but it was really state-led, and governors came together, and it was clear that this is something states were getting excited about, and many of those states were Republican-led. So it's really odd that we find ourselves at this point where we're rehashing the same. We're basically having the same conversation we had 10 years ago. But I think it's a great question, Sharon, about philanthropy, and we'll have to spend some time finding out what's out there.
And Braulio, you may be very right in about how different the atmosphere is. I mean, maybe that's why I don't remember about our response. I was here. But I just don't remember us being active in any way. But I don't remember it, and I love to talk to somebody who does remember who was involved.
Bill, I don't know if you had anything to add there, but I'd love to capture that question and maybe just we can all figure out. There has to be a repository somewhere. There has to be a place we can go to capture some of that. I don't know where it is, Sharon, but we'd have to spend some time thinking about it. We only have 3 more minutes left on this call. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. There were some other questions that we wanted to ask during this portion of the agenda, and I'm going to have to pick one of them and maybe table the other. I think we have an opportunity in the June meeting to bring someone in who can share some insight on grant making in alignment with Florida's standards. Bill, you might be able to speak a little bit more to this opportunity, but I understand we have resources available to us where we can get some, have a short presentation at our June meeting around grant making in alignment with Florida standards. I will say my initial thoughts, knowing that things are going to change, I don't really know how helpful, a training on grant making in alignment with today's standards, knowing that they're going to change soon. But Bill, I'd love for you to share a little bit about that opportunity.
It's a conversation I had with Chancellor Oliva before, as he served on a webinar that we did with the consortium, and actually this is the 3rd time I've seen his presentation, even though Melissa gave it today. My conversation with him was, okay, we have members of philanthropy who are out there funding an education, and how can they understand better how to be in alignment with what the intent of the state and the standards are? And the impression I got is that he said, yeah, we could give some training on that. We can give a presentation on that. Is that it's not so much about taking a grant proposal and then trying to match it point by point with the existing standards. It's more of standards exist. What are the questions you're going to ask to determine from the potential grantee? Are they in alignment with that? So it sounded like it was portable, that if the standards change, it would still be applicable.
Okay. That's really helpful.
Yeah, if we decide to go down that route, I can make sure that that's the case too before we sign on with any speaker.
Sharon and Lady, what's your thought? What's your thoughts to something like that being a part of our June meeting? Is that
Sounds good.
Yeah. I agree.
Charles?
That sounds good.
Okay. So at least maybe a portion of our June conversation, Bill, once you get confirmation that that's indeed portable. Yeah, okay. Let's go around quickly as we close up. Anyone want to throw something on the table that we didn't have time to touch on today, but we definitely want on our desktop here as we continue to move this group forward? Let's go around and do a quick rapid fire before we close out. Chuck, you're muted again.
I thought that was the universal symbol for I'm good.
Oh, you're good.
Thanks for the opportunity. I apparently know nothing about webinars. I'm going to stay on the phone from now.
I just like giving you a hard time.
I can take it.
We're all good? We're all good?
Braulio Kelly has a comment: how to support healthy relationships with the districts as we navigate transition.
Any other topics or questions we want to work together to learn together around? Okay. Just know, look, my hope as we think about 2019 for this group is that we stay energized, we stay excited about the learning agenda together, we grow the group a little bit more, we think about how we can align our time together to what it is we're all working on. I really want to make sure that this group is timely, relevant, we're learning together, and it really helps improve our work in the state of Florida. So if you come up with ideas or questions, please don't hesitate to email me or Bill, and we'll begin to collect these thoughts, okay? But Bob, any last words from you?
Nope. I appreciated the backdrop today. I know there were a lot of things that we already knew about attainment, but I think the context was good. But I appreciate everyone's engagement today.
Bill, are you going to send us the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I made a note to get the PowerPoint. And by the way, we recorded this as well, so we're going to be sharing the link if you want to go back and review any of the comments Melissa or anyone else made.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great Tuesday, and be safe out there.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.